Tuesday's meeting of the Economic Development Committee. I'm here with my colleague, Paul Krikorian. We will be joined shortly by Councilmember Nuria Martinez. But I wanted to get started. We've got some very important and meaty topics to discuss, not the least of which is the labor market and our concerns about workforce development. The figures, as we'll hear, are not very promising. Unemployment's still up here in the city, almost 250,000 people unemployed, and we need to turn that around. So we need everyone's hands on deck, helping to craft solutions and implement policies and programs, solid policies and programs that can be sustainable, that can achieve our desired results, and that can improve the quality of life for the citizens we represent. So let's begin, Mr. Clerk, with the first item.
Item number 1 is a verbal presentation from the Workforce Investment Board and the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation relative to industry and labor market intelligence for the City of Los Angeles.
Great. Gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Greg Irish. I'm the Executive Director of the Workforce Development Board. I'm joined by my colleague,
Robert Science, Assistant General Manager, Economic and Workforce Development.
What you have before you is one of the many reports, and this is the most recent, labor market intelligence for the city, one of the many reports that the department and the board commission so that we can make decisions as to the formulation of workforce development policy and the expenditure of workforce investment dollars that we receive from the federal government and other sources. And of course, you're part of that process because the decisions or the recommendations made by the Workforce Investment Board are then transmitted to the council and to the mayor for approval. And generally, what we did this year, and I've got some previous studies, but we use those to actually develop our plan, our annual plan for the expenditure of workforce investment dollars for the year. This plan went through your committee. It includes $66 million of expenditures on workforce development activities from July 1st through June 30th. And again, the plan reflects both discretionary funding that the department is able to secure from various sources, as well as formula money that we receive from the federal government every year to conduct workforce development activities. Now, the WIB, I'll remind you of its role. It's a commission, of course, that's appointed by the mayor. The members are confirmed by the council. It's prescribed by federal legislation. You must have a WIB locally in order to receive these funds. And the WIB shares in responsibility with both the mayor and the council in terms of the expenditure and the oversight of workforce development programs. There is a local elected official agreement that actually defines the role of each of the three parties, which has yet to be approved by your board. We're actually operating under an extension of that, and I'm hoping we'll eventually get it through this committee as well as through the mayor, because that determines whether we can take future actions, and it's mandated by the federal government. But I want to talk to you about the various reports because it's not as if we can develop recommendations and policies without having definitive information to do so. So over the years, we've actually spent a great deal of money on studying the economy, and this is one of the most recent study. But it goes back to years, to 2005 when we paid for the Milken study. We basically evaluated what was going on in our local economy, and it has since included maybe 4 or 5 studies, and we do actually amend our studies every year so we can make some informed decisions as to workforce development. Now, this study is comprised of a number of components. It's a demographic overview of the city of LA in terms of its population. It includes a labor market analysis of what we have to work with in terms of our workers or the potential of our workers. And it's an occupational analysis. It describes or it defines the industries that are likely to create employment opportunities, as well as where we are with the status of our workers and whether they can meet those opportunities. But, you know, before I get into the actual aspects of the study, I want to talk to you about the attributes of the region. And when I talk about it, I'm going to mention first, before I get to the city of LA, I'm going to talk about the Southland. And the Southland is LA County, Orange County, Riverside County, and San Bernardino. Most people don't know, but we're the largest manufacturing center in the country and one of the largest in the world. I think people are surprised about that. Most folks believe, well, Detroit, et cetera, but the Southland is the largest manufacturing region in the United States. Some of the items that are produced here locally: transportation equipment, apparel equipment, computer and electronics products, and fabricated metal products. One of the other attributes of this region, of course, is international trade. It's a major driver in our economy. The value of two-way trade passing through the area was valued in 2011 at $386.7 billion, compared to the first place jurisdiction, which is New York, which is $387.5 billion. So we're very close in terms of international trade, in terms of dominating the region. A core strength of our community, or this region, of course, is higher ed. I know most people think of SC and UCLA, but we're joined by other universities, one that I prefer, Occidental, one of my alma maters, Caltech, FIT, Otis College, Loyola, Pepperdine, the Cal State Universities, and the Claremont Colleges. And then when we look at some of the Fortune 1000 companies, there are a few here in the Southland, and there are 9 in particular that are here in Los Angeles, and I'll just name a few: Tutor Perini, CB Richard Ellis Group, Mercury Generals, KB Homes, Guess, et cetera. So we have our share of those. The region also has its share, a legitimate share, of businesses that are women-owned, that are Hispanic or Latino-owned, that are Asian-owned, and that are Black-owned. So those are some of the attributes, but what I want to go into is, of course, the challenges that face us. You can't just talk about the great things, although we have many to be proud of. There are a number of challenges we have. And the first is, of course, the recession. So when you look at these reports, I want you to be cognizant of the fact that although we make our decisions based on these are sort of things where folks are making guesses. Some of them are legitimate guesses. But the same organization, which is a legitimate organization that we contracted to do this report and is one of the preeminent economic development think tanks here, is the LA Economic Development Corporation. But they said the economy, the recession would end in 2011. Now it's ended, but of course it has not had as much of an impact in terms of LA. And that's why I've given you some of the data in terms of unemployment statistics, which I think is critical. Now, as of July, and we don't have the August unemployment numbers as of yet, unemployment in the city of LA is one of the highest, and actually our unemployment rate is one of the highest in the nation for a city. And it currently stands at 11.9%. What that means is we have 1.9 million people who are eligible to work. In other words, they're between the ages of 16 and up, and they're actually either working or eligible to work, and they're looking for work. Out of that, we have 1.7 million people employed. We have 233,000 people in the city of LA who are currently without jobs. Now, it doesn't include discouraged workers. It doesn't include folks who have actually dropped out of the workforce and believe that they can't find jobs. So one of the challenges, of course, is the fact that we've got a phenomenal unemployment rate, one of the highest in the country for a city. Some of the other challenges: education. And Robert can speak to this. One of the studies that we did in the past was a study of what's happening with our youth. 1 out of 5 youth in the city of Los Angeles are disconnected from work and education, and/or education. We did a 1 out of 5 study. 1 out of 5. That's the equivalent of the population of Santa Monica. 90,000 young people are out of work and/or disconnected from the labor market. The other issues we have, of course, are with education. We have created an economy that requires higher skill levels. We have a number of folks who've dropped out of high school, who don't have high school diplomas. We have a community college system where it takes 6 years to graduate, to actually complete something with a degree. 6 years. Many of them exhaust their financial aid, so they're not able to go to a 4-year school, but it takes 6 years on average to complete community college. So we have these challenges in terms of educational levels. So whenever we talk about workforce development and economic development, we have to realize the nexus of workforce development, education, and economic development, and our challenges are going to be how to address those issues. Now, this is a pretty big and pretty large report. I recommend it for insomniacs. It'll get you to sleep at night, for sure. I've had the benefit of reading this, and so has Robert. I just want to point out a lot of things to you. I won't take up all your time, and I'll take some of your questions, but I just want to, out of this report, go to the sections that are really important to you. And, of course, there is a section beginning at page 100 that actually divides all the labor market information by council districts. Now, I know you're going to be interested in that, reading about your own council district. Page 100 gives you, we'll start with each council district and all the labor market data by council district. I don't want to brag as to which council district created the most jobs, et cetera, and actually it's not a balanced approach because there are different districts in terms of what's happening with the population, educational levels, et cetera. But in your leisure time, you can go through page 100, find your council district. It'll tell you the extent of jobs. In total, we have 1.6 million jobs in the city of LA. 1.638 million jobs in the city of LA. Now, if you go to page 44, page 44 tells you the occupations that are likely to grow. There'll be, in terms of between 2012 and 2017, we're expected to create 181,205 jobs. Now, that's without the city doing anything. That's the power of the marketplace. Creating 181,205 jobs are projected to grow within the city of LA, new jobs. There'll be replacement jobs, people leaving jobs and will have to replace for those jobs. 208,415 positions will be available to substitute new employees in. That's on page 44.
Now, you referenced the fact that this is without any city action. This is just sort of...
This is just a projection of what the economists are saying.
And so with some successful city outcomes, how can we impact this?
It means that the city can increase that number because, to be honest with you, 181,205 jobs is not enough to actually create jobs for those who are coming out of school, joining the labor market, et cetera. So you're going to be short. So it's critical, and you've got very competent people. Let's be honest, the current general manager knows this subject very well in terms of job creation. She's currently deliberating with her staff in terms of formulating some policies and probably will bring that forward to you later on. But that, if anything, demonstrates the importance of city action in creating jobs in the future. And I don't want to preempt the mayor nor the general manager. They have some ideas. I've heard some of them. I think they're phenomenal. They'll come to you at some later time to ensure that we create more than 181,000 jobs because we need more than that. And again, the replacement jobs will be 208,000 jobs. We actually identify within this document the sectors that are likely to grow in the city of LA and in the region. The ones that are likely to employ folks at living wages and the ones that are likely not to offshore jobs. Actually, within our plan this year, we include all of our strategies are geared to that. We don't support any activities where jobs are likely to flee and become offshored. So $66 million takes into account this report, and this report was the basis for actually formulating our recommendations for next year. So there are a number of exhibits and charts which talk about occupations that are in demand, the levels of education that need to be achieved for these jobs, and I'm an optimist. I have a great deal of confidence that we'll address these issues in the future. But I can't really speak to the economic development challenges because I think you're going to have some presentation on that later. But I will mention the sectors that have the greatest opportunity for us. Construction, especially that's one that can be impacted by what goes on with government in terms of its expenditures. Healthcare, logistics, transportation, and goods movement. As I mentioned before, we are the gateway to the Pacific Rim. 45 or 46% of all product coming to the United States comes through our ports, the Port of Long Beach as well as the Port of LA. Security, after 9/11, which is tomorrow, security's become an occupation, an industry that is growing and will continue to grow. Manufacturing, I mentioned that we are the manufacturing center of the nation. Entertainment, the mayor's taken some action to make sure that we don't lose entertainment jobs and has declared a state of emergency. We are currently dominant in entertainment, but we have some competition from other jurisdictions, and we've got to address that. Biomed and biotech, that's also a focus and a priority of the mayor. Financial services, utilities, and of course, I have two kids. They always used to like Kermit the Frog. Everything is green. Everything is green. Anything we can do to make any industry environmentally sound environmentally safe, has potential for the future in terms of job growth. So I want to just talk about some quick issues, and then I'll turn it over to Robert in terms of what some of the folks are saying is the dominant themes throughout the country in terms of economic development and workforce development. Where the breakthrough is going to come from. We always think of GDP. We always look to Washington for solutions. Ultimately, the solutions are local. They're local. They've got to be local. We've got to start thinking of GDP here, especially when the LA region accounts for a lot of GDP in terms of the state share of its resources, the federal government share of its resources. Instead of national GDP, we have to start thinking about city GDP. The city has to have a master plan for economic vibrancy and job growth that must recognize that leadership, entrepreneurship, and enterprise are needed for job creation. Let me just say, in 2009, almost half of all venture capital money spent in the United States went to 4 cities. 4 cities. New York, Palo Alto, Seattle, and Sunnyvale. We've got to correct that disparity. So the obvious question is why? All have the same federal government. They all have created a culture, and this is the reason why, that responds to innovation and creates business models like no other place on earth, and that's what we've got to do. And again, I have confidence in the mayor and the general manager. We have to have an entire focus on job creation. Everybody in charge of anything in the city of LA needs to focus on job creation. And I think the mayor did that, asking general managers basically to come up with a plan to apply for their jobs and connect that to job creation. If there's a bike path and it doesn't have anything to do with job creation, we shouldn't do it. There shouldn't be a bike path if we can't do it. If rezoning improves the jobs outlook, we need to rezone. But not just any job will do. We want good jobs. City leaders should wake up in the morning thinking about job creation. Work all day on job creation, and it's job creation that should keep them from sleeping at night. Thank you.
So, Robert Science, Assistant General Manager, Economic Workforce Development. So it's actually my job to take all of the good recommendations, take all of the studies, and implement. And under the leadership of our General Manager, Jan Perry, we are rethinking and reviewing all of our work in terms of how we support economic development. The next item in front of that will be in front of you will be our request to have a new RFP for our adult system, which we could talk more specifically on that. But currently what we have within the department that supports this effort is 17 workforce centers that focus on our adult population. We have about 150,000 folks walk through our doors, unduplicated folks walking through our doors a year. At the height of the Great Recession, we had 175,000 folks. So it really met a community need. On our youth system, which we completely revised and repurposed in the last 2 years, we have over 9,000 young people walking through our doors through 13 centers. Of that 9,000, a vast majority of them were out-of-school youth, that population that is not connected to school and work. We've put 1,000 kids back to school and back into the educational process. We also operate 9 business source centers, and Greg did mention that many of our business development within the city and our economy depends on small businesses. Whereas the city is a city of small businesses, we have 9 centers that work to support startups as well as expansion of small businesses. Our overall efforts in terms of the new opportunities that confront us as a city, and in terms of having now an economic development department, is that we don't have the same tools that we had a year ago or even 2 years ago. And we're losing another tool come January 1st in terms of the enterprise zone vouchers. So as a city, we do have to come out with both new policies, identification of resources, but we have to have a coordination of our workforce work, our economic development work, and our education.
Since we started the report, we've been joined by Council Member Huizar and Martinez, and members, any comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman. Thank you. One of the biggest, I'm sorry I came in a little late, so I hope you didn't cover this, but one of the biggest issues that we often hear is an actual indicator that is used as to how well we're doing as a region is the actual unemployment rate. And the numbers first came out when our economy started to decline. Los Angeles wasn't faring too well with the rest of other large cities in the country. And we see that we have some improved numbers, but how does that compare with other areas? I mean, everyone's improving in that area. Are we improving at a rate we would like to see, or do we have those numbers in this book?
Yeah, we do. And actually, I gave it, there's a handout. It's not in the book because the numbers change monthly. As of July, our unemployment rate is 11.9%. 233,600 folks are out of work. Now, when we talk about unemployment, of course, it's surveying that takes place. The state surveys under federal directive. To be honest with you, that unemployment rate does not truly reflect unemployment within the communities that we have, if only because it only measures those who are looking for jobs. It doesn't measure discouraged workers, and of course, it's not down to the community level. You have rates of unemployment in certain census tracts that are in the 40 percentile range. Unemployment has particularly been ridiculous in terms of the level of impact on folks of color. Latinos and African Americans are disproportionately disproportionately included within the ranks of unemployed, and believe me, their unemployment rates aren't at 11.9%. So if you look at our stats over the past few months, just from January to July, we have another week before we get the August rates. We've actually gone, in January we were at 12%, 230,000 people were unemployed. And again, also because the economy grows, actually we're at 11.9% and we have 233,000 people out of work. And as you go over the span of time, it went from 12% in January to 11.4%, a little bit of an improvement in February, to 11% in March, to 10.2% in April, to 10.2% in May, and then it's now beginning to creep up to 11.3% in June and 11.9%. What I need to remind you of is when you hear the job numbers and how things are improving, and the President pays attention to that. Last month there were 185,000 jobs created in the United States. California led the way. They are not living wage jobs. Most people have to work more than one job, so the quality of jobs is very important, and I'm sure the mayor and the general manager will have some recommendations. Creating any job is not what we want to do. We want to create living wage jobs. Failure to do so will mean more stress and more of an impact on government resources.
And in comparison to the national and the state, Los Angeles is about 4% higher than the national average. It's about 3% higher than the state average. And even when we compare it to the region, it's about 2 to a point and a half higher than the surrounding counties.
Right.
So Los Angeles disproportionately has a higher unemployment rate than anywhere else in the country.
And secondly, our land use patterns obviously help or not help capture some of the emerging industries and what we make use of our land. There was a proposal in the past by the CRA and the Planning Department to stop the conversion of manufacturing sites over to residential and commercial. Obviously, that was done to capture our tax base, not lose any more of our tax base, and hopefully promote more of our manufacturing jobs. And we're losing a lot of the land where the economy was high and people wanted to build. We're going to see that pressure again come back to us. At that time, I thought that certain parts of downtown, I wasn't in favor of that policy because you had areas like the Arts District that you had emerging communities come up and you could have new industry. You don't have the same old, what do you call those, haystacks or whatever you call them from the past, which we were clear polluters. You could have industry, manufacturing next to residential, commercial now. It's a great mix that you don't have to actually use the same old neighborhoods to block out certain types of uses. And it's been a success. We see a whole new neighborhood propping up in the Arts District with new restaurants. A building that was being held back from being converted from manufacturing to new uses now provides 233 jobs. It's a restaurant, a few retail stores, cleaning for the building, apartments, condos, I think, where before that property would have stayed there for decades because who wants the type of manufacturing that was used in the past is not the type of manufacturing we want to attract now. So in your analysis here, and by the way, I want to point out that the council district maps are the old council
I know.
district maps.
Yeah,
You got that? Okay.
Actually, it was prepared before. We're going to update it again.
All right.
We will. We're going to update it based on the new boundary.
And so I think we do need to continue to look at that and to look at these policies, although well-intentioned at the time, one size does not fit all throughout the city. And what it did miss, I think, was that policy that was proposed in the past was kind of not only saying we don't want to lose any more of our manufacturing land, but say what industries are emerging and how do we capture those and make it our land available for that. It was kind of like looking at it the other way around. So I think that whether we talked a lot about the clean tech, we talked a lot about another emerging number of technology, some industries like that. But how do we capture those and make land and sites available for them so that those jobs do come here? Those companies want to come here for that.
You're going to still feel the push and pull of what you do when you have the battle between residential, commercial, and industrial. Actually, in the book, and I've got these statistics, as to land use, 46% of all land in the city of LA is zoned residential, 18% commercial, 5% industrial, and 18% is vacant. So maybe you have some discretion in terms of the vacant portion, but there is always the push and pull of creating places where people can live. And by the way, this book, in terms of the demographics, speaks to the fact that the biggest expense, housing is the largest expenditure. It accounts for an average of anywhere from 38 to 52% of people's income. So you're still going to have make those decisions, the balance between residential, industrial, and commercial. And as you know, most industrial kinds of usage create middle-class jobs. So you're going to have to come up with some sort of acceptable compromise where you still create housing opportunities, but you create middle-class jobs. So again, 46% of all land is residential, 46%, commercial is 18%, industrial 5%, 18% of land is vacant. What you do have in your toolbox is the fact that clean tech will eliminate some of those issues where residential and industrial can live side by side as activities.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Councilwoman.
I'm looking at your graph, and I'm looking at your numbers between January and July. So it looks like between April and May, we dropped 2 percentage points. That's almost 35,000 jobs. Do we know what areas we are losing jobs in?
Yeah, and I can get you that information. The reason why it wasn't included in this is because it changes monthly.
Right.
I can tell you where we're losing jobs, and again, I can even tell you where we're gaining jobs. I need to caution you that when always been a lot of focus, because we've always been pressed by raising revenue for the city, on creating opportunities in retail. But just be mindful of the fact that retail doesn't create living wage jobs. But I can get you that information. Robert and I can provide you with that information. We'll have a new update in August. We can get you the industries that have grown in the city, those where we've lost jobs, et cetera. We can get you that as soon as it's released. I think it's released in a week. I think we've got a week before they come up with those new stats.
Is it broken down by what parts of the city?
That's the challenge. It's not broken down by cities. We probably would have to delve into it a little bit more. Robert and I have been discussing with the general manager whether we can, these studies are always overarching, whether we can make them more targeted. We'll get back to you guys as to whether that's possible.
Exactly who's
Yeah.
losing what kinds of jobs and where.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, both of you gentlemen, thank you for the report. I think it does provide us with a good backdrop as we discuss items 2 and 3. But I think one point that was made, something we should all keep in mind, is that every decision we make should be viewed through the prism, is it going to help create jobs?
Yeah.
Does it help or hurt? And frequently we kind of miss that. And certainly this whole discussion of using industrial land for residential or not is part of that same tug. We want to
fraught with
create
trouble.
new opportunities, but as many have said, once the industrial land goes, it never comes back.
Never comes
And
back.
so how do we maintain a presence and options? A real challenge downtown for those of us where the manufacturing has been historically, but it does present obstacles, I think, for us to look forward. So, again, thank you, gentlemen, for your
appreciate your time.
presentation, and
Thank
we
you.
look forward
Thank you, members of the committee.
to an update. Members, we're going to do two things. One, I'd like to take item 5, put that on consent without any objections. We'll do that on consent.
Put item on that 5?
Item 5.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair. Richard Williams, City Clerk.
Yes.
For the record, the description for item 5 should have indicated that it is I'll go ahead and read into the record and then read the correction. It's Resolution Weston Price relative to authorization for the Los Angeles Development Fund to apply for a $125 million allocation of new market tax credits. The description read 100 million. It should be 125.
Okay. Without objection, that correction will be noted. We will also, we're going to come slightly out of order, take item 4 so that we can accommodate the schedule of Councilman Weezar that has a plum committee, I think, this afternoon as well.
Item number 4 is a motion, Weezar Fuentes, relative to an instruction to the Economic and Workforce Development Department with the cooperation of the CAO and the CLA to identify business retention best practices and make recommendations as to the provision of incentives or other measures to assure the retention of businesses, tenants, and employees subject to displacement as a consequence of city infrastructure improvements and facility development projects.
Okay, we have a couple of cards on this item. Let's take those first. Mark Spilo. And Stephen Knudsen. Mr. Spilo, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and council members. My name is Mark Spilo. I'm the president and owner of SPILO Worldwide. We manufacture, import, and distribute over 3,000 beauty care products, and we market our products to customers in 45 countries presently. We were founded in Los Angeles 71 years ago and have been a fixture in the industrial area of downtown Los Angeles for 3 decades. We currently employ 70 people. SPILO is one of the 11 companies referred to in Councilmember Weezar's motion. At least a portion of our property will be taken by the city for purposes of the new 6th Street viaduct. And we are trying to hang on to a remaining portion so that after the new viaduct is completed, we can move some of our operations back to our current location. We greatly appreciate Councilmember Weezar's assistance in this regard. In any event, our company is going to be displaced for several years as a result of the viaduct construction. Strictly from a financial standpoint, there are many good reasons for us to leave the city for any number of neighboring jurisdictions. Land values are less expensive. In most cases, there are no business taxes, and in many cases, access to freeways is easier for our trucks, and access to transit is easier for our employees. Our very strong preference, however, is to remain in Los Angeles and preferably within the industrial area of downtown. I am told that we are one of the oldest continuously operating companies in the city. Our identity internationally is with the city. Excuse me. We have been active for many years in the Business Improvement District and other efforts that have led to the commercial and residential renaissance. I will finish quickly. Renaissance of the area, and our employees for the most part live within a comfortable radius of the area. The motion before you will help put a laser-like focus on measures the city should consider to keep companies like SPILO Worldwide in Los Angeles. We acknowledge, of course, we are being displaced for the greater good, of course, but that displacement should not mean we have no choice but to leave. As a matter of preference, we want to stay. As a matter of policy, the city should help make it possible. We commend Councilmember Weezar for introducing the motion before you and respectfully urge you to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next.
Okay. My name is Stephen Knudsen. I'm CEO of Stover Seed Company. We've been a family-owned business since 1922. We're a wholesale seed company, and we have about 20 full-time employees, many hired within the Boyle Heights and surrounding areas. We built our offices and loading facility in the early 70s as an improvement to the warehouses we've had there, and we've desired to stay in the area we've been in, watching it go from a blighted area to being a nice place to be now. Our desire is also, like Mr. Spilo, to stay in the area. And as he's pointed out, there are certainly a lot of reasons to leave, but we'd like to, as we mentioned to the real estate employees that first came to speak with us about being displaced, have the tax benefits that some new businesses are offered to come and stay in the city be offered to us. Since we've been in the city for a long time, we'd like to stay an LA company. And I think this tax relief measure would certainly help us at least consider or keep LA industrial area on our radar.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your comment, for both comments. We certainly want both of you to stay, and appreciate your willingness to work with us to make sure that we reach an agreeable solution. Maybe not the best or one that you'd want, but one that we can all live and work with. Mr. Weezar, do you have any comments on this motion?
Thank you,
On this
Mr.
item?
Chair. And this came to our attention when we realized there would be some businesses relocating with the construction of the 6th Street Bridge. And many of these businesses indicated to us their interest in staying in the city of Los Angeles. But then we realized that at that point, once we relocate them, they obviously get relocation benefits because of the relocation. But at that point, they have a decision to make. Do I go to another city, or do I go back to the city of Los Angeles? We have incentives such as a 3-year tax break for new businesses to attract new businesses, and we thought that this would be appropriate to apply to them as well, because they're making that same decision. But if they go back in the documents and paperwork, they would see that they're an existing business, but they're really going to be a new business should they decide to stay in the city of Los Angeles. So we're asking these CLA, CAO, and others to come back with a report on how we could make it possible for businesses that will have to make that decision because of relocation, because of public infrastructure improvements, to stay in the city of Los Angeles and provide them those incentives. Now, we were looking at this because of the 6th Street Bridge, but then we realized there's going to be a number of other public infrastructure projects. Metro's building, they're the largest public infrastructure construction program right now. It was LAUSD for a time when Ms. Martinez was there. But we thought that this would be a great way to apply to some of these other businesses as well. So Sam Wong is here from the Bureau of Engineering, if there are any questions for him. So I'd like to ask that we move this item with 2 caveats. The first is that we add the Office of Finance to the CLA, CAO, and the other departments or divisions we've added there. And secondly, to have 2 report backs. One would be in 30 days, specifically for the 6th Street Bridge businesses, because that's moving forward and some decisions are being made now. And if we could have that quickly on the tax, on the the tax holiday incentive for them. So we would have a 30-day report back on the 6th Street Bridge businesses that are being relocated, on how they could take advantage of the tax holiday incentive program. And then all the other ideas or possibilities we could do, there's a number of other incentives that we could come back with a full report for all public infrastructure programs at a later time. But I think the immediate one is the 6th Street Bridge, so that these businesses are able to make their decisions at the time they're being relocated. So we can make those 2 changes to the report.
Okay. Yes, sir. Members, any comments on that? Without objection, I'm sorry.
I just
Paul?
wanted to comment that it's a terrific motion, and this is really an important step. We have another example of this, Mr. Weezar, is the DWP's massive overhaul of its infrastructure throughout the city, its water delivery systems and electrical delivery systems, which are causing tremendous disruption to businesses throughout the city. So I think it's really important that we have these best practices in mind. The one caveat I would just add is that particularly when we're looking at tax incentives as one of these best practices, one of the problems I had with the business tax holiday in the first place is that it wasn't in any way targeted towards those businesses which are most susceptible to tax issues as being the motivating factor in their siting decisions. And I think, we have to give thought to how to do that in a way that that targets those businesses for whom that is the most significant factor, so that we're not just simply giving away subsidies to businesses for whom that's not a particular issue. So I think we always have to keep that in mind whenever we deal with any tax subsidy issue. I think this is a great step forward to get a list of the tools that we can use and keep in our toolkit for businesses throughout the city, and I appreciate your bringing it forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's an important template for us to use in other areas as well. And we want to make sure we're being as accommodating and as responsive to issues associated with relocation when it comes up. So with that objection, that motion and the amendments will be adopted and a report back in 30 days. Right. Okay, members, let's go back to the file. I'd like to take items 2 and 3 together.
Item number 2 is a Community Development Department reports and motions, Perry Garcetti, Cardenas, and Perry Parks, relative to the program year 2013-2014 Workforce Investment Act Workforce Center Operators Request for Proposals. Item number 3 is a Community Development Department report relative to the program year 2011-2012 Workforce Investment Act WorkSource and OneSource Center Operator Annual Performance Evaluation Results.
Okay, these 2 items obviously are a follow-on to the report that we got earlier. I think they fit together, and so I don't know who wants to go first.
So I'll go first, but we're joined here with 2 of our colleagues, much smarter in terms of our direct operational staff, and we'll be able to answer some of the questions that we have on the evaluation side, Mr. Greg Burks and Lisa Salazar with Economic and Workforce Development. So what we have before you is a request and a report back to release an RFP to redo our workforce system. And this is the 17 centers that we currently operate. And I would like to start that we do have a good system. We have a good system that has been established for about 15 years, and we haven't put out to RFP since that time.
Why?
Matter of fact, the federal legislation actually allowed us to grandfather from a previous funding source, the JTPA, and allowed us to certify the operators every 2 years using the Malcolm Baldrige process. So we tried that certification, and we've done that certification process. We've shrunk the system from what it was about 22 to 23 operators about 10 years ago down to the current number of 17. So when we did have operators that weren't performing and weren't able to carry out the contract, we did recommend non-funding of them. We have been over the last couple of years attempting to RFP this out, and for various reasons we have not received the approval. We did receive the approval in the annual plan and the recommendation from the Controller's Office, the recommendation from the Department of Labor, and the recommendation from EDD to procure this year. So it's on high priority for all of us as well as in the department.
Mr. Chair, quite frankly, some of the delay in actually procuring a new adult system, and you'll be interested in this because, and Robert and I always dispute this. He says 17 centers, I say 18. In fact, there's 17 centers at 3 portals. One is actually in your district on Broadway. Chicana Service Action Center runs that. We treat the Housing Authority as either a portal or a full center because it connects all Housing Authority projects. And then there's one other, Living Independently Through Employment, which is a small job center in downtown in the Skid Row area. One of the problems we've had, of course, with going out and procuring our entire adult system is the fact that we wanted to get a system in place that would work for youth. We now have the new youth system. Lisa Salazar is Director of Youth Programs. We're a model for the country. We just had today, before this meeting, a evaluator that was sent by the federal government to evaluate our youth system, which is brand new. We wanted to get that out of the way. We're now ready to tackle a new system again for adult programming. It's going to be very difficult. I think you've got a document that talks about the vision for this system. and we'll probably go out and procure as soon as we can, and of course, the process will be to go through the WIB with the results, then go to the council with the results, and then go to the mayor with the results. We're hoping, in light of what's likely to happen with Washington, because every year we've seen less and less money coming to us, we'll have to make some hard decisions as to the funding levels and where the centers are located.
So our plan is to release, as of October 1st, the RFP, and we really want to take advantage of the innovation. So when we talk about creativity and innovations, take advantage of the new technologies and really revision our adult system. We need to actually work very strongly with the community college system and with the LA Unified Adult Ed system. One point that we didn't talk about earlier is that 27% of our LA resident population is without a high school diploma. And when you talk about the undereducation of our workforce, is one of the reasons why we haven't had that economic development growth. So we need to have these 17 centers working in concert with LA Unified and with the Community College District, that we could bring folks back in, educate them, and bring them to give them the skills that they need to get to the workforce. Thirdly, we need to be able to have industry involved both at the WIB policy level, but working directly with our WorkSource centers. We've invested heavily over the years in sector initiatives, but we want the sector initiatives to be grounded within the WorkSource centers. And when we talk about having WorkSource centers having specialties, they will have specialties in the growth industries, like healthcare, like education, like green technology. And with that, we do believe we'll come back to you with a system that will be stronger, will be better, and will face the challenges that we're looking at as a 21st century economy.
Mhm. So the new RFP, then how does it encourage, address, or identify opportunities for innovation? What's different in this RFP? As specific as you can be,
Right.
In terms of what we're asking for, what we expect, and how we're going to evaluate the success.
So three areas. One in particular is about registering all clients as they come through the doors. Right now, what I mentioned earlier, we have 150,000 folks coming through our doors. We only register a very small fraction of that, probably less than 5%. The rest.
And why is that? I mean,
It was how the system was set up to do this universal access, which means, and it does meet a need within the communities. When folks are looking for work, they come into our resource centers, they're able to use the computers, they're able to get basic workshops about resume writing, they're able to look at job boards. But the economy has changed and the technology has changed now that we need to go deeper. We need to register all clients. So part of our proposal is that all clients that come through the door, we're going to do a registration into our system. We're going to actually have a technology that's going to refer them to the LA Unified and the Community College system. We'll be able to track them that way. We'll also be able to take advantage of all the mobile technology of how folks are looking for jobs now, or in how the industry is looking for employees. Very few folks are doing written resumes anymore. Very few folks are doing written applications. Everything is based on the web and folks being able to use that technology. So that'll be number one in terms of how we're going to make a drastic change. The second drastic change is with the partnerships. Part of the legislation has mandated partners, and it's kind of oxymoronic to say mandated partner, but we do have I would say various degrees of partnerships in the current system. And oftentimes the areas that need the better partners, like in South Los Angeles, oftentimes has the less partnership because it's the less desirable of folks to actually work with those particular centers, or they don't have the institutional strength. What we're going to mandate, and we're going to take the responsibility as a department, is to negotiate those agreements up front with LA Unified, like we've done in the youth system, with the community college, with Voc Rehab, and then go to our neighbors, the county, the Department of Social Services, who spend a lot of money in workforce training. And also, those are the clients that we're serving currently, and forge that relationship and take it out to all 17 successful bidders. And so we'll be upfront with who our partners are. And then thirdly is that we do a very traditionally have done a very poor job of connecting economic development with our workforce system. Before, when the predominant economic development efforts were in the CRA, they were doing their particular piece of work and we were managing the workforce system. we were doing our piece of work, and the two shall never meet. And because we're under one department now and have economic and workforce in our title, we're going to make sure that any economic development activities that are happening are directly connected to all of our workforce development efforts. So as a good example...
That's going to be a part of the evaluation then?
Yeah, that'll be part of the evaluation. And in terms of our evaluation, we actually evaluate through the RFP is their past experience of what they've done in the past. So although it's an open RFP, we weight heavily of their experience that they've done in actually doing the work. We're not going to be evaluating on just the proposal itself. They have to have demonstrated ability. The second is about what they're bringing to the table. We have some great partners currently, or some great operators currently, who actually are very active in bringing veterans money back down. They're very active bringing state money down. They have their own partnerships, and we're going to weigh heavily on folks that are able to bring other monies into the centers. So these centers should not be only funded by WIA dollars or by the city. They should be co-funded and have leverage dollars coming back in, and we'll weight heavily on that part of the evaluation.
Well, is this criteria going to work against new entrants, new organizations that perhaps have had different experience but not directly on point?
It would only work against them if they're a brand new organization saying, hey, we could do workforce work but has no demonstrated ability. We do get a number of those that want to come in, and we encourage them to partner with folks that have had the demonstrated ability. We are highly encouraging the community college and LA Unified to play an active role, not just being a partner in each of the centers, but also to do some co-location of these within the public institutions. A number of council offices have identified facilities that we could actually locate our WorkSource centers so we could reduce our lease costs, so we could put more money back into the community. And so while we're RFPing here for the center providers, we're going to have the ability to recommend where they're actually located when they're serving the community.
Mr. Chair, I think when we did the youth system, you can speak to this, Lisa, I think we did have a number of successful respondents that are brand new to our youth system. So new applicants can successfully respond in the process. I think we had 3, Lisa, or 4 that are new contractors, YPI.
Brotherhood Crusade.
Yeah, and
Harbor College.
YPI, Brotherhood
well,
Crusade.
4 of them, Brotherhood Crusade,
Harbor College.
and the one in CD9,
Oh, CRDC.
CRCD. Yeah.
So you're saying there are points for collaboration? In other words, are we encouraging collaboration? Do
Yes.
organizations
Yes.
get additional points for showing they are working together or they've got established relationships?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, sir.
You know, your newest reports indicates that you're going to strategically locate these centers with the highest concentrations of poverty and the long histories, long-term unemployment, et cetera, et cetera. Yet it's clear that didn't happen in the past, at least
Right.
not to the degree some thought it should be. What's the guarantee going to be that those areas that really need, first of all, are going to get a center and then get a budget that reflects the work that needs to be done in those areas?
Well, we are going to come
For
back
example,
to this committee.
depending on who you talk to, District 9 had no workforce center.
Now you have you're right.
And you know, the monies allocated there and other parts and other parts of the city just don't seem to be commensurate with the need. And so
And that's exactly the reason why we want to go out to RFP. These are legacy, since we hadn't gone out to RFP as a department or the former community development department, the community's changed, the needs have changed, and there's been, Van Nuys is a good example where the poverty rate there has increased dramatically. CD9, in terms of Central Avenue Corridor, the poverty rate increased dramatically, and we have not gone out to RFP to actually meet those needs. So that's exactly why we want to do it. We will come back to your committee with the recommendations, so you'll hold us accountable if we're not matching where the need is, where we're recommending.
Okay, members? Mr.
Yeah.
Huizar?
Thank you. And I brought this up a number of times already, and I want to. I'm very appreciative of your question, Mr. Chair, because it's a concern I've had in the past too, of matching where the real need is. And I mentioned how in Bow Heights there is none, but yet you match that to any other area in the city, and it's definitely a place that would need it. I was told that Lincoln Heights, the one in Northeast LA, would serve that area, but for low-income folk who have it very difficult for access for transportation, depend on public transportation, it's a world away. The topography is such that you have the, several rail lines, USC campus, hospital, and it's just a very difficult area to get to for folks from Bow Heights to get to that area. I definitely think that needs to be corrected. And we've had these discussions in the past. The new Bow Heights City Hall is available, should that be a location. But my overall question is, how do you match that in an RFP? I mean, how do you say, okay, we're going out for an RFP, we need new, let's call them vendors, and yet we want them to locate in these areas. How do you match that in the RFP to assure that we are getting them in the places of greatest need?
So in the RFP, we'll identify the top 20 communities with the highest unemployment rate and the highest poverty rates. And so we'll have already a pre-identified area. What we generally do is we do it by region.
Before you go on the RFPs, do you have those?
Yes.
For the
Yeah.
committee to
We do.
review?
Yeah.
We do.
Okay, and you'll get that to us
We
before
can
you
get
go on an
Sure.
RFP? Okay.
Yeah, and we'll include that in the RFP. And then secondly, we actually rate by planning areas, the 7 regional planning areas. So when we just don't take the top X number of proposers, we actually break it down by the east side, South Los Angeles, Central, Harbor, and North and South Valley. So we're actually looking at like proposers. So within, say, the South Valley, we're able to look at the locations folks are recommending and actually see which one is matching, greatest in terms of our demographics.
So do the actual vendors apply for certain slots, or do you see which you qualify, and then you assign them to certain areas of the...
No, we'll ask them to identify the regions that they would want to apply for. But some of them have historical relationships. As an example, let's take the Urban League as a historical relationship with the Crenshaw area community. That would be one that would probably apply in that particular area. What we also are going to put into the RFP is that we're going to limit any agency to 2 applications. So what we don't want is any particular private or nonprofit organization to come in and say they're going to apply for 10 areas, and we know we have a very diverse community. We also know, as a part of our provider list, we need to be able to meet language needs, we need to be able to meet cultural needs, we need to be able to meet disability, we need to be able to meet veterans. We have a very high need, vulnerable population within the city, so we have to make sure that we have a diverse service organizations.
Okay, thank you.
And if there are city-owned facilities that are available, how does that come into the mix? Is that something that the vendor would propose, or do we have a list and say that as part of the RFP, these areas are available?
As a part of our staff work, we're identifying locations that are large enough. We do have a couple of facilities that have been proposed to us by council offices saying we have a facility that is 7,000 or 8,000 square feet. It's city-owned, so we don't have to pay for the rent, just pay for the maintenance and utilities. And once we have those list of facilities, when the proposers come in, we could actually say, yes, we're selecting Group X, and we'd like you to deliver the service at this location. A part of their budget, which we will evaluate them, is the location. And what has happened since we had a reduction in money, the lease costs has actually taken a greater and greater percentage, which means that's less money for training, less money for services. So we are going to reward, in essence, folks that come in and propose lower lease costs and facility costs.
Any questions?
Do you have a timeline for the release of the RFP?
Yes, it's in a packet that was, I believe, distributed, and October 1st is when was the release dates, and we would keep it open for an extended period of time, and of having December 13th to try to get it right before the holidays back to us, and between and over the.
You said December 13th?
Right, is our time to have it submitted to us as a department. During the Christmas holidays, in order to meet this timeline, we would actually be reviewing, our good staff here, Greg and Lisa, will be reviewing. And we do initial review to make sure that we have a complete application. But what we also do is have external raters. So that's a big point, is that the raters are folks that sign confidentiality agreements as well as conflict of interest forms. So the external raters are folks that are operating systems in other parts of the state. We generally get folks from other WIBs, as far as San Diego and up from Ventura, and they'll provide a non-biased, hopefully non-biased, objective perspective of the proposals. Then we actually bring it to, we have an appeals process. We do take it to the WIB, and the WIB has to vote up and down on it. Then we bring it to you all as part of the committee, and then to full council. So this will be vetted in various public forums, both for content as well as the accuracy of our proposals.
And will you be updating this committee on a regular basis?
Yes, we can.
For evaluation?
Yes. Our first, what we'll also do is a bidders conference, and during the next month is be advertising, to the bidder world that this is going to be available. We'll hold a bidders conference, and what we will report back to you is the number of folks that have registered as potential proposers, so you could get a sense of the diversity that is coming in.
I think we'd also probably like to learn how you did the outreach, what the nature of the outreach was, and with as much detail in terms of kind of media, et cetera.
As well.
Yeah, right. We've got an interest from the, and definitely there's a whole private sector industry that does this piece of work, but as far as New York, and people have been waiting for, the city of Los Angeles is considered one of the best systems already. We want to make it better. So there's a high interest both from the public sector as well, nonprofit sector and the private sector to bid on this. And I think our residents deserve it.
Well, this certainly is a very important program and a critical tool in the toolbox. And so we will be tracking with you very closely the development of the RFP, the publication of it, and then the results that come back. Yes.
I'm sorry, one additional point. When we were discussing scoring criteria, you mentioned language diversity, and I think it should be obvious that every workforce center should have a ready facility in Spanish as well as in English. But what might be a little bit more challenging is to meet the broader range of language needs across the city, because it may or may not be geographically segregated. And so I would ask that you consider that in your scoring criteria and take into account the other significant languages: Korean, Tagalog, Armenian, Persian, Chinese, the others that are significant parts of our population as well.
Right.
Okay, let's shift a little and consider how these workforce centers, these one-stop centers, have been evaluated. I hope there's been some collaboration with the evaluation before the RFP goes out. But what's been the experience of the performance of this program and of these workforce centers?
So I'll give a general statement, then I'll turn it over to Greg and Lisa here, who, like I said, are much smarter than I am and know this much better. But one of the good news is that we're one of the few city programs that actually does do an active evaluation and monitoring on an annual basis. I wish we could take all the credit that it came internally, but it is actually by legislation, federal legislation that forces us to, and it's something that we want to do, to actually evaluate and monitor. So we have the Department of Labor that we report to. We also report to the Economic Development Department within the state. But overall, our evaluation and monitoring tools are very rich. It has reduced from about 10 years ago in terms of the old system, where we had about 21 open investigations of the system, and we had millions of dollars of potentially disallowed costs. Proud to say we have a couple of open investigations of reports, but nothing too significant. but we also have reduced that whole negative liability that we carried for many years of the system. Really,
Based on what?
so it's based on that, and I'll definitely turn it over to Greg and Lisa here. It really is about our staff monitoring and having established criteria that we actually monitor these agencies up against each other. So, Greg, Lisa.
All right. Good afternoon. Pleasure speaking in front of you. For the evaluation...
Identify yourself, sir, please.
I'm sorry. Greg Burks, Economic and Workforce Development Department. Years ago, the criteria or the criteria for establishing the evaluation process was actually, the DOL said that we would have to evaluate just one evaluation per year. Okay, but the city actually decided originally to do a quarter evaluation, but of each work source center and each one source center. So originally it was just once a year, but today we evaluate bi-monthly. So there's 6 evaluations or monitoring sessions per year. And a monitoring session would be that we have an analyst that will go out and actually monitor and evaluate that particular work source centers on different criterias. So, and it switches each evaluation time that they're out. But today, I believe there is a transmittal that we really wanted to give you an update on something that actually happened about 2 years ago, the 11-12 performance evaluation. But what we want
This is the adult star?
for the STAR system. So what we really want to do is just to provide you with the background, understanding that it is fairly old, but as Mr. Science and Mr. Irish is saying, that we actually have 18 work source centers and 13 youth source centers. So a total of 31 centers in the workforce development system that we evaluate. And the evaluation actually, what it is a report card, okay? And we want to make sure and ensure that our contractors are actually meeting minimum standards of operations, but really more than that, right? And I'll get into the minimum standards because nationally, our minimum standards are actually quite high. But there's 4 distinct categories that we evaluate. And the first one is customer satisfaction. Second one would be performance outcomes. Third would be customer flow. And fourth would be administrative capability. So what we do, we call that the SOFA, as in terms of the acronym. So in the 4 distinct areas, if you look at the first one, which is our customer satisfaction, what we want to do, we want to evaluate the current participants. How is the work source center doing? Rate them. And there's specific questions that are asked through our subcontractor, which would be for evaluations, which would be Cal State Northridge. They will go out and actually pose specific questions in regards to the evaluation of that particular work source center and one source center. So that's one way. Second way is to look at individuals that actually went through the program, that are exited from the program, and ask them specific questions. And again, this is through Cal State Northridge. The third would be to actually sit down or call or sit down and speak with employers, because it's all about how that particular work source center and one source center are engaged with the employer base, as in terms of, are you satisfied with exactly what that particular work source center or one source center performed for you. So, and there is a specific performance benchmark that each center must hit to be actually deemed satisfactory or very good or excellent. Okay, and I don't know if you all have heard in regard to the STAR system, the 4-star, and the 4-star system equates to really exceptional services in all the particular areas. I first talked about the customer satisfaction. Second, going on to the performance outcomes and customer flow. This is where the rubber hits the road. This is when you walk, and when a participant walks into the workforce center, what kind of services are you getting, right? Are you getting a job? That's the bottom line. You know, the Department of Labor provides the funding, and the bottom line is that we want to ensure especially in the adult system, that individuals are securing living wage jobs, and they're retaining those particular jobs. So there are specific performance measures that we as a department, as a city, and also as a Department of Labor, they look for. And I mentioned a little bit earlier in regards to the minimum standards. And the minimum standards for us, for our work source centers to be deemed satisfactory would be 80%. So if you're in school, if you get 80%, that's basically a B. Okay, so we're saying that in order to meet your contractual obligations, each work source center and one source center must be at the 80% level, right? And some of the areas that we measure would be interemployment, retention, average earnings, placement into employment, attainment of a degree or certificate, literacy and numeracy gains for the youth system, and those are the Department of Labor measures. And then we added additional measures. We added the local measures would be placement rate, right? And this is where a work source center would actually, let's say, there's 100 individuals that they serve a year, which we know they serve more, but I'm just giving you that number because I'm poor at math. 100 that they serve, okay? We're saying in order to be deemed satisfactory in this particular area, that you must actually secure positions for 80 of the 100. That's 80%. Okay, so if you're at 75% or 60%, you're not meeting your contractual obligation. So every single category we have, we're saying that you must achieve at that 80% level. So you have the average wage, the retention, and the exit amount of individuals that go through your system and exit. And the expectation is when you exit, you're going to exit with a placement. Right, so that particular person will find employment. Mr. Science mentioned in regards to the universal access. So again, in this particular year that we're evaluating, I believe it was 167,000 that walked through our door. But we have been as high as 190,000 walking through our doors, getting services, not enrolled into the program per se, but each work source can provide a myriad of services for those particular individuals, help them find jobs. But it's actually, they're not enrolled into the system per se, but they are enrolled into our system where we know that they're walking through our doors, if I'm making sense in regards to that. The fourth area that we evaluate is how that particular work source center, one source center is doing administratively. As you know, there's a lot of benchmarks, a lot of hoops that you have to jump through in operating a program. We're dealing with budgets, we're dealing with invoices, we're dealing with directives. Are you actually adhering to the directives and whatnot? So this is a way that we hold them accountable administratively at the end of the year. So if you look at the four distinct areas that we have, it's quite extensive. And we're saying that in order for you to actually even be in the game, so to speak, as in terms of securing 4 stars, that you must meet 80% of all of the outcome and flow measures, which I named. There's probably about 12 measures. So you must meet 80%. So you must be at the B level even to get the first star. In order to be deemed exceptional or receive the 4 stars, to receive the 4 stars, you have to meet 100% of that particular goal, not 80%. So in other words, in 2011, 2012, I believe we had a total of 4 work source centers out of the 18 that met each goal at the 100% level. And for the youth system, there was a total of 11 of the 13 that met 100% of their goal.
Now, the bid is going out. What's the term going to be? Is it like a
So typically we do it. Yeah, we do it 3 year.
One-year extensions, or?
No, we do 3 years, and we're with 2 one-year option extensions. Well, as a part of the WIB-LEO agreement that's being discussed right now, we definitely would want to put that as a distinct policy that we do bid the system out every 5 years. We do not want to see this happen again in terms of the extended period of time.
Questions?
Kind of a, I guess, technical question. As I understood you to say earlier that with the universal access philosophy, not all of the participants register, but that is going to be the practice going forward.
Yes, sir.
So if not everyone is registering, then how can you effectively evaluate the outcomes of the participants if they're not registered?
What happens with universal access, remember, it was implemented because jobs were in an abundance when the Workforce Investment Act was actually enacted by Congress. So you were helping people come in, and you called them universal access because you immediately wanted to connect them to the workforce. So you may have done a resume for them, and you didn't track them, but we have tracked them. What we've done is we've kept a record of those people, and we bump them, their Social Security numbers, their names, against the wage files. Everyone who works in California and the United States is in a wage file. And we've been able to produce results even on universal access customers, even though we're not required by federal legislation. So we can produce the results that were required by the federal government on the ones we register in the neighborhood of 4,500 or 5,000. And on the 150, sometimes it went up to 170, as Greg said, we've bumped those names against the wage and base files that the state has to determine how effective we've been at serving them as well.
Okay.
In the new system, we'll register everybody.
So I guess I misunderstood. The lack of registration doesn't mean that they're coming in without identifying themselves. That
Right.
You still know who they are.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
You're
Yes, sir.
tracking the outcomes as to that individual
Right.
within your data set.
Right.
Okay.
Councilwoman Martinez?
So getting back to the evaluation, so you evaluate them 6 times a year? So that's every 2 months?
What we do, we monitor each workforce in every other month.
These reports get sent back to council?
There's actually, no.
No, the monitoring parts we keep within the department. We do report to council every 6 months in terms of the evaluation. We have a 6-month evaluation globally.
You monitor them 6 times a year,
Right.
which is almost
Every other month, yeah.
5 times
yeah.
more than required.
and 5 times more than required, then you come back to council every 6.
Yeah, and we give you a report of, one is an interim report of the standing, and the second is a report of what happened during the year. And we also include that in the annual plan that's produced for you as the performance results. As you,
Now, and the vendors know that there's going to be a review. Do they know when? I mean, are these surprise visits, or how does that work?
Yeah, at the beginning, Lisa Salazar, Economic Development Department, from the program analyst side, at the beginning of the year, which runs July 1st through June 30th, in the month of July, we'll issue an information bulletin to all of our system contractors, letting them know what the schedule is for the coming year in terms of monitoring, what the specific areas that will be covered in those different months. And then our program analysts work with the contractors to schedule a time. So we don't do surprise visits.
Mm-hmm.
Those are scheduled. They're well aware. It's really a partnership. It's really
So they have the
teamwork
records
management.
available, and they know what you're going to be looking for.
right,
Yes.
Right.
To a degree, we pull files. We don't tell them what necessarily all the time what files. We pull files and we review files as well. And of course, all the expenditures are run through the fiscal unit of the department, so those are constantly tracked.
And then the customer satisfaction that is done by a third party is actually, they'll go out to a center, generally unannounced, and for a day be outside of a center and take random customer satisfaction reports.
Good. Any other questions, members? Well, thank you all for the presentations. This area is very, very, very important. I know we all believe it's a critical tool in the toolbox, and so we want to work with you, collaborate with you to monitor this program from beginning to the end, to make sure that it's getting the kind of coverage in the community that makes sense, and that we're providing services for our residents. I mean, this is really where the rubber meets the road. And these programs, as they impact our youth and our adults, are where it happens. So thank you for your service, and we look forward to future reports, updated reports, so we can...
We're here for you.
Excellent.
Can I get a copy of your annual report?
Okay, we're going to note and file both of those reports.
This is last.
Okay, members, we have one last item, and I've got some cards here. Can we, item number 6.
Item number 6 is a motion, Parks Perry, relative to identifying funding for the Community Market Conversion Program.
Okay, can we get a staff report on this?
There's no report on this
No
item.
report?
It's just a motion.
Okay, just a motion. We've got a couple of cards. Let's take Claire Fox, Rudy Espinoza, and Brenia Morrison.
Hi, good afternoon. I think Rudy
Okay,
had to
Brenia's
take
not
off.
here. Okay, Claire?
Yes. Hi, good afternoon, council members. My name is Claire Fox, and I'm the Strategic Initiatives Coordinator for the LA Food Policy Council. And in that role, I'm also the project manager for the Community Market Conversion Program. So this program began at the CRA as a program to provide business development support to mom and pop corner stores, and now it continues at the LA Food Policy Council as a larger part of our strategy to address food deserts throughout the city. So as you are probably all very aware, low-income residents in Los Angeles tend to live in neighborhoods with very limited options for healthy food, as well as a proliferation of liquor stores, fast food, and convenience stores. So for example, in South Los Angeles, there are 3 times as many of these small stores as compared to West LA, and that compares and correlates to 3 times as much poverty and 3 times the level of diabetes and obesity. So these small markets, these small neighborhood markets really are the existing food landscape in many low-income neighborhoods across Los Angeles. And this program is really a solution for improving the food landscape while also supporting small businesses. So what do? We provide technical and financial assistance to small food operators so that they can renovate their stores, they can buy new equipment, they can offer more fresh and healthy food to the community. We also provide business and leadership trainings for neighborhood market owners so that they can succeed as healthy food retailers and continue to grow financially, thereby catalyzing other retail investments in their area and hopefully providing more jobs. We had a very successful conference this Saturday, Healthy Foods, Healthy Businesses, at Los Angeles Trade Tech, and Councilman Price was our fantastic keynote, so thank you very much for that. And the motion before you would assist in the completion of the store conversion projects underway, both the CRA project as well as the projects that the LA Food Policy Council picked up. City funding enables the Community Market Conversion Program to operate as a neighborhood economic development initiative, which meets critical development and food resource needs in our city's most struggling neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. It was an exciting program this weekend, and I think it just underscores the fact that, food policy is a component of economic development, especially in low-income areas and in areas of need. And this program, the specific program, Community Market Conversion Program, is I think, an exciting initiative as we try to provide technical assistance to existing businesses and to new businesses, making sure that they're meeting our needs in ways that we haven't before. Members, any comments, questions?
Thank you.
Okay, seeing none, we will adopt the motion as presented and report back to the council, report back to the committee in 30 days, and then on to the council. I'm sorry, Rudy, is Rudy here? Rudy's not here, and then Brenia is not here. Okay, so I guess that wraps it up. Is there any other business?
Nope.
No
That
other
concludes the
cards.
agenda.
Okay, seeing no other business, members, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.